because we've been taught that rest is lazy. We've been taught that slowing down is failure. We've been taught that productivity equals your self worth. We've been taught that if you're not grinding, then someone else is passing you by. And winter is an opportunity to get ahead and not a season to just survive. Welcome to A Year Without Fear, the podcast where we stop letting fear make our decisions and start building the creative lives we actually want. I'm your host, Bethany Morris, and over the next year, I'm going to take you along with me as I write a novel, attempt to turn content creation into my full-time career, and confront my deepest, darkest fears. Welcome back to another episode of A Year Without Fear. I'm your host, Bethany Morris, and I'm a certified somatic and trauma-informed coach who believes that your greatest life lies on the other side of facing your fears. So let's get right into it. Today, we are going to discuss what a winter arc is, how the idea of the winter arc and the holiday season conflict with each other, and practical tips to feel and do your best during the holiday season. And of course, we're going to do some homework and then get into a little life update. So, what is a winter arc? So, the gist is that rather than setting goals in the new year, you use October 1st to December 31st to start a 90-day transformation where you develop healthy habits and you work on resolutions that you would usually do in the new year. And as far as I could find, the Winter Arc Challenge originated on TikTok by Carly Burgess in 2024, so just last year. But if you are online or chronically online like I am, you have seen a lot of winter arc content over the last several weeks. So an example of that could be that you're going to exercise 30 minutes a day, get 10K steps a day, sleep 7 to 8 hours, maybe try to get 30 grams of protein per meal, upping your water intake, reading for 15 minutes a day, practicing mindfulness, et cetera, et cetera. You get the gist. I get why the winter arc is so seductive. It definitely gives you structure during a time of year when life feels really chaotic. It promises you transformation, and who doesn't want that? And it makes you feel productive during a season when everything else is kind of slowing down. And it's also a chance to beat the January rush because when January comes around and the gym is crowded and people are trying to change your life, if you started in October, you're already kind of ready and in your routine for the new year. But what if that is all wrong? What if the fear of slowing down is actually just kind of hustle culture in disguise? It's hustle culture wearing a new outfit, if you will, because we've been taught that rest is lazy. We've been taught that slowing down is failure. We've been taught that productivity equals your self worth. We've been taught that if you're not grinding, then someone else is passing you by. And winter is an opportunity to get ahead and not a season to just survive. But the reality is that the winter arc occurs during the darkest time of year. So, according to an American Academy of Sleep Medicine survey, 34% of US adults report sleeping more in winter compared to 10% who sleep less than usual. And this makes sense because in nature, trees are dropping their leaves or they already have dropped their leaves. Bears are hibernating. Seeds are resting underground, waiting for springtime showers to blossom again. Everything in the natural world is just kind of slowing down. Everything is trying to conserve energy. Yet we as humans who are also a part of the natural world and nature think that we are supposed to be the exception to the rule, that we are supposed to override millions of years of biological imperatives and be more productive when it's dark and cold outside and not less productive. We think that we're supposed to go hard in the winter instead of using it as a time for reflection. And if you're anything like me and you have a chronic illness and you're kind of already struggling to keep up with the hustle and grind culture, the temptation to add like another form of structure or discipline to your routine does sound appealing. But I know if you know my story, you know how quickly that can burn people with chronic illnesses out, and something that also burned me out. Not to mention, obviously, the last quarter of the year is the start of the holiday season. So, when we talk about the winter arc, meaning the holiday season, I would say that the holidays are as much a time for reflection as they are for stress. This year specifically, there is a lot of economic pressures. Families everywhere are struggling to put food on the table, much less have a mountain of presents under the Christmas tree this year. If you're working, the end of year reports are due. Trust me, I know how stressful that is. If you're in school, it's finals time. And if you're a woman, there's a lot of, well, I say, especially if you're a woman, there's a lot of emotional labor that goes into the holidays and that falls on your shoulders. Not to mention, this time of year is seasonal depression time. So, according to a 2024 poll from the American Psychiatric Association, Americans are twice as likely to say their mood declines in the winter as they are to say it improves. So, in addition to our mood suffering during the winter, another thing that gets overlooked during the season, I think, is grief. For if you don't know, my mom passed away. It'll be 4 years next March. And I know how hard losing someone during the holiday season is. It feels a lot more, or at least for me, it felt a lot more hollow and empty without her. But obviously, it's not all bad this time of year, even though there is grief and things like that. This time of year also gives us the opportunity to set the stage and decide what we want for our lives in 2026. So, without further ado, here are 4 practical tips to finish out your year sustainably. So, number one, you're going to want to create a sustainable 1 month goal for December, not an entire life transformation. So, pick 1 to 3 goals that are achievable in your current state and not in your ideal state. Pick goals that are flexible and can be adapted to bad days. Pick goals that are restorative and make you feel better and give you energy instead of draining you. So, some examples: instead of I'm going to work out 5 times a week, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to read 30 pages daily. Try something like I'm going to move my body 3 times a week in a way that feels good. Or I'm going to read 10 minutes a day before bed on days that I have capacity. Or I'm going to protect my sleep and be in bed by 10 p.m. So, some examples of my December goals are to, one, keep the podcast going 1 episode a week, even if it's shorter, simpler than what I would usually do. Number 2 is to write 2 days a week until the end of Writing Productivity Club. And then when I am in Ireland, I'm going to take my laptop with me and do some writing there, but only when I feel like it. And then number 3 is to take 2 weeks off at the end of December for rest and restoration and just traveling around Ireland. And 1 month works because December is already overwhelming. You don't need long-term pressure. And it also helps because you can reassess in January with fresh information and a newish routine in place in order to inform your goals for next year. And it's also just permission to get through the hardest year of the month. And it also sets you up for success instead of failure, so you can build momentum for January and the rest of 2020. The second tip is to practice minimum viable effort days. And what that is some days you honestly do the bare minimum and you call that enough. So, some simple examples of a minimum viable effort day would be for work to show up, do what is required of you, leave on time, and not take on any extra projects from that coworker who is slacking off for the last 2 weeks of the year. Creative projects, it could be to show up when you're able to, but not force yourself to stick to a super strict routine during the busiest time of year. For self-care, you can really simplify. Instead of doing a 20-step skincare regime, you can pare that down to 3 or 5 steps: brush your teeth regularly, drink a lot of water, eat regularly. For social interactions, you can protect your time. This matters because on hard days, minimum viable effort days gives you the permission to stay in the game of transforming your life without breaking you. On good days, you can do more, but on bad days, you give yourself permission to rest. The third thing is to track how you feel and not what you did. So instead of tracking output, which is like workouts completed, pages written, tasks finished, I want you to track your internal state. So at the end of each day, rate your energy level 1 through 10. Did you feel depleted or sustained? Track your mood. Did you feel okay or did you feel miserable? Your peace. Did you feel grounded or did you feel anxious? Your body. Did you feel pain or discomfort or did you feel relative ease? And eventually you'll start noticing patterns. Like on Fridays, I crash and mornings are better for me to get work done. For me, for example, I crash around 1:30, 2 p.m. So I try to reorient my hardest tasks to take place at the beginning of the day. So you're actually learning what restores you versus what drains you. And you also are going to stop measuring your productivity based on metrics. So the goal in December isn't to be say unrecognizable. It's to stay recognizable to yourself, not to lose yourself in the grind, not to lose yourself in the hustle. So I might write 500 words one day and feel terrible because I pushed myself and I didn't get enough sleep. But instead, I might write 0 words that day and feel peaceful because I listened to my body. And the day after that, and in the future, I will be better rested and have better output on those days because I'm working in a sustainable manner. And then the fourth thing is to set boundaries with the winter arc content. And the reality is, if you are scrolling at the end of the day and you are feeling like you're falling behind, you're feeling like you need to change everything about your life in a matter of weeks, what you can do is obviously mute or unfollow those accounts. Posting the winter arc routines or the 75 hard routines or whatever is in vogue in that moment that makes you feel like you need to do the most at the end of the year. You can curate your feed intentionally and follow people who give you permission to rest and not permission to grind. One of my favorite things to do is to have a temporary account or a burner account that I use whenever I feel like my algorithm needs a refresh and I need to see different kind of content than what it usually shows me. Because if you're consistently being told that you should be grinding, you should be hustling, you should be, going hard 24/7, that you can sleep when you're dead, when you're constantly being told those things, it puts that pressure on you when really you need to be protecting your environment. Okay, so that brings us to the homework of the week. So I want you to write down what are 4 self-care things you can do for the rest of December. And then our reflection topics for the end of 2025 are: who are 3 to 5 people you are grateful for in 2025 and why? What are 3 things you need to forgive yourself for doing in 2020? What fears held you back in 2025 and how can you confront them gently in 2026? And finally, I want you to write a letter to the 2026 version of yourself. What are you proud of them for? What have you accomplished? What do you want 2027 to look like? Okay. And with that, it brings us to the end of the homework segment and transitioning into a quick life update. I am now on 9,500 words of the novel. I am so, 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 so close to 10,000. So I'm so excited about that. It's still going really steadily. I am finding it challenging in a good way. Writing a mystery in particular, there's a lot of skills that I'm having to learn, like how to plant clues, how to set up a red herring, how to set up alibis and suspects. But it's been very fun. So, for the next section, I did want to provide a content warning. I am going to be talking about my body and losing weight and exercise and that kind of thing. So, you can always skip to the next section if that's something you don't want to hear. But, quick life update as far as transforming my body. I have been eating in a calorie deficit with the help of a GLP-1. This week, I also started pole dancing, which has been so much fun. And I think I'm going to continue that. It's really been a blast. So, yeah, just working on transforming my body slowly but surely. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the episode. Today, we talked about the fear of slowing down in December and how that fear is being amplified by winter art culture. We explored what the winter arc is and why it's so appealing and why pushing yourself to transform during the busiest, darkest, hardest part of the year might not be the most sustainable practice. We talked about how the winter arc intersects with the holiday season. And finally, we covered 4 practical ways to honor your body's need for rest, for slowness, and for sustainable productivity during the darkest time of year. Remember, you don't have to be unrecognizable by January 1st. You just have to still be here. Thank you so much for joining me, truly from the bottom of my heart. And I will see you next week. That has been another episode, A Year Without Fear. Bye.